news happens fast, and if you're not on top of it, it's going to pass you by. So today, there was the interview from Kamala Harris with Brett Baer from Fox News. And when you get on Twitter or X, whatever you want to call it, we see these stupid little lefty Muppets talk about how amazing this interview was, and she was so powerful, and she was so strong and assertive. She dominated that interview. So I was curious because most of the time when they talk like that, it was dog shit, and that's exactly what this interview was. So I watched it, and I wanted to share it with you. So we're gonna watch this interview again. Maybe I missed something, and we're gonna go through it. So the interview is about 26 minutes long. I know that means that my commentary is gonna make it 2 hours long. So I promise I'll keep it as concise as possible. But I think it's important that you hear the entire interview, not just bits and pieces that are hand selected by those that want to manipulate you. It's important for you to see and hear this entire interview. So let's jump to this. So here we go.
Madam Vice President, thank you for the time.
Thank you. It's good to be with you, Brett.
Voters tell pollsters all over the country and here in Pennsylvania that immigration is one of the key issues that they're looking at this election, and specifically the influx of illegal immigrants from more than 150 countries. How many illegal immigrants would you estimate your administration has released into the country over the last 3.5 years?
Well, I'm glad you raised the issue of immigration because I agree with you. It is a topic of discussion that people want to rightly have. And you know what I'm going to talk about.
Yeah, but
right now,
just a number. Do you think it's 1 million, 3 million?
Brett, let's just get to the point. Okay, the point is that we have a broken immigration system that needs to be repaired.
So your Homeland Security Secretary said that 85% of apprehensions.
I'm not finished. We have
it's a rough estimate of 6 million people have been released into the country. And let me just finish. I'll get to the question, I promise you.
I was beginning to answer.
And when you came into office, your administration immediately reversed a number of Trump border policies. Most significantly, the policy that required illegal immigrants to be detained through deportation, either in the U.S. or in Mexico. And you switched that policy. They were released from custody awaiting trial. So instead, included in those were a large number of single men, adult men, who went on to commit heinous crimes. So looking back, do you regret the decision to terminate Remain in Mexico at the beginning of your administration?
At the beginning of our administration.
Okay, so this was a simple question. She has been vice president for almost 4 years. She has been appointed the person, maybe we won't call her the border czar, even though that's what this administration called her, and so did several newspapers, cited her as the border czar. So we won't use that term. That's fine. They claim that she was never the border czar. But nonetheless, the president appointed her to take care of the border because she's highly qualified, I think is what he said. Which is fine. I'm not saying she's not qualified. She whatever. But Brett Baer asked her a simple question. What's the deal with all these bloody immigrants? And why is it so high? So she starts going on her rant, obviously. And the problem is this entire interview, and you're going to hear this now that I say this, maybe you already picked up on this, is she's going to come across as a naggy bitch. I don't know how else to put it. I don't think this is a flattering interview for her because of how she reacts to these questions. Also, I want you to pay attention to how many times she talks about Donald Trump instead of herself. So to me, there's a lot of tells in this interview that I think point to something far more significant that's happening in her campaign. But let's move on. Let's listen to her answer.
Administration, within practically hours of taking the oath, the first bill that we offered Congress, before we worked on infrastructure, before the Inflation Reduction Act, before the Chips and Science Act, before the bipartisan Safer Communities Act, the first bill, practically within hours of taking the oath, was a bill to fix our immigration system.
Yes, ma'am. It was called the U.S. Citizenship Act of 2021.
Exactly.
It was essentially a pathway to citizenship for the... Yes, ma'am.
May I finish responding, please?
But
you have to let me finish,
you
please.
had the White House and the House and the Senate,
I'm
and they
in the
didn't bring
middle
up
of
that bill.
responding to the point you're raising,
Okay.
and I'd like to finish.
Yes, ma'am.
I want to buy.
Oh, stupid ads. Stupid ads. The last time I watched this interview, there were 0 ads, actually.
Your house. I can pay you cash for your
now
house,
there's ads
no
all the
matter
time.
what condition it's in.
Shut your mouth.
We recognized from day one that, to the point of this being your first question, it is a priority for us as a nation and for the American people.
Yeah, borders are important.
And our
yes.
focus has been on fixing a problem. And from day one, then, we have done a number of things, including to address our asylum system and put more resources, getting more judges, what we needed to do to tighten up penalties and increase penalties for illegal crossings, what we needed to do to deal with points of entry between border entry points. That's the work we did, and we worked.
By the way, I know I'm pausing this when in the middle of her lengthy answer. So they talk about how, oh, well, border crossings are down. Well, no, what they did is they found a way to funnel these into the border, the actual checks more, the actual crossings, like the legal crossings, and not just in the middle of the desert. So they're saying that, well, there's less, pickups in the middle of these, the illegal crossings. Yeah, they're seeing less in the middle of nowhere, but they're seeing an increase at the actual ports of entry.
On supporting what was a bipartisan effort, including some of the most conservative members of the United States Congress, to actually strengthen the border. That border bill would have put 1,500 more border agents at the border, which is why I believe the Border Patrol agents supported the bill. It would have allowed us to stem the flow of fentanyl coming into the United States, which is a scourge affecting people of every background, every geographic location in our country, killing people. It would have allowed us to put more resources into prosecuting transnational criminal organizations, which I have done as the Attorney General, former Attorney General of a border state.
Madam Vice President, a couple of things.
Prosecuted trafficking of drugs, guns, and human beings. And Donald Trump, but let me just finish.
6 Democrats voted against that bill.
Learned about that bill and told them to kill it because
Donald Trump's not in office.
Instead of fixing
Donald Trump
a problem.
is not
and
in
in
charge.
This election, this is rightly
He's not
a discussion
the president.
that the American people want to have.
Here's the problem with that bill that Donald Trump killed, which he had no control, no power to do it. The reason why that bill got killed was there was a vast amount, billions of dollars that went to foreign aid and not to the border. It's a lie. They fill it full of things. They do this all the time. Republicans and Democrats both. And when they create these bills, they fill them full of these pork that go to everywhere else, but then they label the bill, the Nourishing Poor Children Act. But then there's like funding for a bridge in Lithuania or something. You know what I mean? They do this all the time. So the bill died because there was actually people, including Democrats, as Brett Baer is going to point out, that actually read the context and realized this bill is not helping the border, it's helping other countries. And that's why that got shut down.
What they want are solutions, and they want a president of the United States who's not playing political games with the issue,
I hear you.
but actually is focused on fixing it.
6 Democrats voted against that bill. It would have allowed 1.8 million illegal immigrants into the country a year. A lot of conservatives had a problem with it.
Bernie Sanders voted against that
But more
bill.
importantly, back to the original premise, Jocelyn Nungary, Rachel Morin, Laken Riley, they are young women who were brutally assaulted and killed by some of the men who were released at the beginning of the administration, well before a negotiated bipartisan bill. Former President Clinton actually referred to Laken Riley Sunday campaigning for you in Georgia, saying
I don't know if you
those
saw
men
this.
had been properly vetted,
Bill Clinton
Laken Riley probably would
torpedoed
not have been killed.
her campaign
so if
with
it
his
wouldn't
speech.
have happened,
Torpedoed it.
this is well before any negotiation. This is well before Donald Trump got involved in the politics. This is a specific policy decision by your administration to release these men into the country. So what I'm saying to you, do you owe
Brett,
those
I think it's
families
really,
an apology?
Let me just say, first of all, those are tragic cases. There's no question about that. There is no question about that. And I can't imagine the pain that the families of those victims have experienced
Look at her body language.
for a loss
Look,
that
she
should
is-
not have
so I've got
occurred.
it here and I've got it over here.
So that
and
is
this
true.
screen that I'm looking at over here
It is also true
is a full screen.
that if a border security had actually been passed 9 months ago, it would be
her face
9 months
is very stressed.
that we would
she
have
likes to
had
furrow
more
her
border
brow.
agents at the border, more
sits very
support
weird,
for
like,
the folks who are working
I don't know.
around the clock
I'm
trying
not
to
a
hold it all
micro-expressions
together
Madam Vice President.
to ensure that no future harm
But she
would occur.
does
And this
love
election in 20
filibuster.
days will determine whether we have a
you
president
can
of the
hear-
United
you
States
heard
who
me say she
actually
sounds
cares
naggy.
more about fixing
Listen
a
to
problem,
this
even if it
nagginess.
is not
It
to
is-
their political
Ugh.
advantage in an election, because there was a
Can you imagine
solution,
listening to this
Brett.
for 4
Madam Vice President,
years?
it was a policy decision in the early part of your
I don't-
administration.
I don't
will
care
let
if we
one
have
of
a
the
woman
mothers
president.
talk about it. Take a listen.
This. Ooh.
Because of the Biden-Harris administration open border policies catch and release, they were enrolled in the Alternatives to Detention program. This meant that they were released into the United States. It was not even a full 3 weeks later that they would take my daughter, Jocelyn Nungare's life. I believe the Biden-Harris
3 weeks
administration open
of
border
this open
policies
border,
are
3 weeks.
responsible for the death
She
of my
loses
daughter.
a child.
That's the early days. So do you owe them an apology is what
I
I'm
will
saying.
tell you that I am so sorry for her loss. I am so sorry for her loss. Sincerely. But let's talk about what is happening right now with an individual who does not want to participate in solutions. Let's talk about
Donald
that
Trump's not
as
in this
well.
interview. But do you
Brett,
wanna answer
in all
her?
fairness,
Donald
I told you,
Trump
I
is
feel
not in this
awful
interview.
for what she and her family have experienced.
During that time, you said repeatedly that the border was secure. When in your mind did it start becoming a crisis?
I think we've had a broken immigration system transcending, by the way, Donald Trump's administration, even before.
Sorry, I paused it also.
Let's all be honest about that. I have no pride in saying that this is a perfect immigration system. I've been clear, I think we all are, that it needs to be fixed. We need more. I was just down at the border talking with border
Again,
agents, and they will
you
tell
have
you, and I'm
been in
sure you
office
probably, I
for
know
the
you
last
investigate and you are
4
a serious journalist.
years.
They will tell you we need more
4 years.
judges. We need to
can't fix
process. We need to process those cases faster. We need the support for those cases
And then Waltz, you heard Waltz say, "We can't stand 4 more years of this." Yeah, dummy. She's in office.
that should be prosecuted. They need more resources, and Congress ultimately is the only place that that's going to get fixed, Brett.
Well,
that's how this system works.
That's the premise of this question.
But
There were
that's how the
90
system
plus
works.
executive orders that were rescinded in the first days. Many of those were Trump border policies. I'm not going to stay
90
here because
executive
there's other
orders
things to talk
rescinded,
about. But you
and the
frequently
majority of
talk to
those
the
were on the
Border
border
Patrol
that
Union
Trump
for support of that bipartisan
initiated.
bill, and they did. They supported it. But they also just endorsed Donald Trump and said, you've been, quote, a failure with border security. Why do you think they said that?
I think they're frustrated, and I get it. They want support. They want support, and that's what that border security bill would have done. These guys down at the border,
lying.
these men and women, they're working hard. They're working around the clock.
She is so pissed. She
I get
doesn't
it.
want to be in this interview.
There's a lot of people that look back at what you said in 2019 when you first ran for president. And there have been changes, and you've talked about some of them. When it comes to immigration, you supported allowing immigrants in the country illegally to apply for driver's license, to qualify for free tuition at universities, to be enrolled in free health care. Do you still support those things?
Listen, that was 5 years ago, and I'm very clear that I will follow the law. I have made that statement over and over again, and as Vice President of the United States, that's exactly what I've done, not to mention before.
If that's the case, you chose a running mate, Tim Walz, governor of Minnesota, who signed those very things into state law. So do you support that?
We are very clear, and I am very clear, as is Tim Walz, that we must support and enforce federal law, and that is exactly what we will do.
So they could write any kind of federal
decriminalizing
law,
border
and they'll follow it.
crossings, like you said in 2019.
I do not believe in decriminalizing
But the Second
border
Amendment
crossings, and I've not done
doesn't
that
count.
as Vice President. I will not do that as President.
So these are evolutions that you've had.
No, but let's be very clear. I'm the only person who's running for president who has prosecuted transnational criminal organizations, from the Sinaloa cartel to the Guadalajara cartel to people who have trafficked in guns, drugs, and human beings. I have spent a significant part of my career going after people who present a threat to the safety of the American people and cross our border with the intent of doing us harm and cross our border illegally. And I will do that work as vice president. I take that work quite seriously.
This is a time when voters, especially here in Pennsylvania, are inundated with commercials and ads. They just want it to stop because it's every commercial. But many of them add noise, but a few of them seem to break through. This particular one from the Trump campaign has gotten a lot of attention.
Kamala supports taxpayer-funded sex changes for prisoners.
Surgery.
For prisoners.
For prisoners. Every transgender inmate in the prison system would have access.
So are you still in support?
So here's the thing. I know we need to let her answer, but here's the reality. She will say whatever she needs to say in whatever friendly interview she's in. She'll say whatever. She has no core principles, even though she says later on in this interview, just jump on my website. You'll see 80 pages of me talking out of my butt. That's fine. But when she's in these interviews, it's like she doesn't think there's any recourse for what she says. She'll say whatever she wants just to make it sound good. Just like her housing proposal and her small business proposal. All these things are going to cost trillions of dollars. Where are we getting the money from? We just print it? She doesn't understand how economics work? Apparently not. We'll just give money. Yes. Oh, I will do all these things. Here's the reality, folks. Joe Biden for look, folks, reality. The reality is we just say whatever we want. We don't have to do it when we get elected. No, Joe Biden didn't really say that, but that was my Joe Biden voice.
Support of using taxpayer dollars to help prison inmates or detained illegal aliens to transition to another gender.
And why the hell would we pay for that
I will
shit?
follow the law. And it's a law that Donald Trump actually followed. You're probably familiar with, now it's a public report, that under Donald Trump's administration, these
now she's pro-Donald
surgeries
Trump.
were available to on a medical necessity basis.
This is like a Donald
to
Trump
people
commercial.
in the federal prison system. And I think, frankly, that ad from the Trump campaign is a little bit of like throwing stones when you're living in a glass house.
The Trump aides say that he never advocated for that prison policy and no gender transition
Well,
surgeries
you know what? You got to take responsible for what happened in your
presidency.
administration.
Yeah, no surgeries happened in his presidency.
It's in black and white.
Would you still advocate for using taxpayer dollars for gender reassignment
I will
surgeries?
follow the law, just as
whatever the law
I
says.
think
Yeah,
Donald
she'll
Trump
follow
would say
it.
he did.
You would have a say as president.
Like I said, I think he spent $20 million on those ads, trying to create a sense of fear in the voters because he actually has no plan in this election that is about focusing on the needs of the American people. Whereas, at $20 million on that ad, on an issue
How does she know what he
that,
spent?
as it relates to the biggest issues that affect the American people,
She's like the crazy
it's really
ex-girlfriend
quite
that
remote.
follows
And
the
again, his
ex-boyfriend
policy was no
around
different.
and like
Look at where
monitors
we are,
everything he
though.
does.
They say
On
it's
plans for
different,
the
but
American
we'll move
people,
on.
I'm offering a plan to deal with affordable housing. I'm offering a plan to deal with what we need to do to strengthen small businesses, which are the backbone of America's economy. I am offering a plan that is about taking care of young parents and giving them the support they need. My plans for the economy will strengthen the economy, as have been
cripple the
reviewed by
economy.
16 Nobel laureates, Goldman Sachs, Moody's, and recently the Wall Street Journal, which have all studied our plans and have indicated my plans for our economy would strengthen our economy, his would make them weaker,
My friend
would
said
ignite
that I had a good
inflation,
idea.
and invite a recession by the middle of next year. Those are the facts.
Why do you think more people say they trust him on the economy than they trust you?
I think that when you look at an analysis of our plans for what we would do as President of the United States, it has been clear to those who study and understand how economic policy works that moving forward, because I do believe the American people are ready to turn the page on the divisiveness and the type of rhetoric that has come out of Donald Trump. People are ready to chart a new way forward, and they want a president who has a plan for the future, and a plan that is sound and will strengthen our country. My plan for the economy does exactly that. His plan would be, again, to give tax cuts to billionaires and the biggest corporations in our country and blow up our deficit.
Oh, funny story with giving the tax cut to the millionaires and billionaires and the big businesses. Like 90% of those millionaires are Democrat voters. So she should be for this. Jeff Bezos, what's his bucket that owns Facebook? All but a very few of the richest people in America vote Democrat, by the way. So he'd be giving a bonus to the Democrats. But it's not true. That's not obviously how it works.
It's interesting you said turn the page, Madam Vice President. You were asked on 2 different shows last week what, if anything, you would do differently than President Biden. Here's what you said.
Would you have done something differently than President Biden during the past 4 years?
There is not a thing that comes to mind in terms of, and I've been a part of most of the decisions that have had impact.
Under a Harris administration, what would the major changes be? And what would stay the same?
Afghanistan?
Sure. Well, I mean, I'm obviously not Joe Biden.
I know.
And so that would be one change in terms of, but also I think it's important to say with, 28 days to go, I'm not Donald Trump.
So you're not Joe Biden, you're not Donald Trump, but nothing comes to mind that you would do differently?
Let me be very clear.
No.
My presidency will not be a continuation of Joe Biden's presidency. And like every new president that comes into office, I will bring my life experiences, my professional experiences, and fresh and new ideas. I represent a new generation of leadership. I, for example, am someone who has not spent the majority of my career in Washington, D.C. I invite ideas, whether it be from the Republicans who are supporting me, who were just on stage with me minutes ago, and the business sector, and others who can contribute to the decisions that I make about, for example, my plan for increasing the supply of housing in America and bringing down the cost of housing, addressing the issue of small businesses, which is about working with the private sector to bring more capital and access to capital to our small business leaders, including my plan for a $25,000 down payment assistance for first-time home buyers and for small businesses, extending the tax deduction from $5,000 to $50,000.
We've heard a lot about those plans in recent days. Your campaign slogan is a new way forward, and it's time to turn the page. You've been vice president for 3.5 years, so what are you turning the page from?
Well, first of all, turning the page from the last decade in which we've been burdened with the kind of rhetoric coming from Donald Trump that has been designed and implemented to divide our country and have Americans literally point fingers at each other.
That means the last
rhetoric and an approach to leadership that suggests that the strength of a leader is based on who you beat down instead of what we all know. The strength of leadership is based on who you lift up. The strength of an American president, which is one who understands that the vast majority of us have more in common than what separates us.
This is not good
more than 70% of people.
That is about turning the page on rhetoric that people are frankly exhausted of, Brett.
More than 70% of people tell the country is on the wrong track. They say the country is on the wrong track. If it's on the wrong track, that track follows 3.5 years of you being vice president and President Biden being president. That is what they're saying, 79% of them. Why are they saying that? If you're turning the page, you've been in office for 3.5 years.
And Donald Trump has been running for office.
Running for office? It's not in office.
You and I both know what I'm talking about. You and I both know what I'm talking about.
I actually don't. What are you talking about?
What I'm talking about is that over the last decade, people have become, but listen, over the last decade, it is clear to me, and certainly the Republicans who are on stage with me, the former chief of staff to the president, Donald Trump,
and then 4 years of Donald
former
Trump.
defense secretaries, national security advisor, and his vice president. One, that he is unfit to serve, that he is unstable, that he is dangerous, and that people are exhausted with someone who professes to be a leader who spends full time demeaning and engaging in personal grievances and it being about him instead of the American people. People are tired of that.
If that's the case, why is half the country supporting him? Why is he beating you in a lot of swing states? Why, if he's as bad as you say, that half of this country is now supporting this person who could be the 47th president of the United States? Why is that happening?
This is an election for president of the United States. It's not supposed to be easy.
I know, but
it's not supposed to be. It is not supposed to be a cakewalk.
So are they misguiding?
Are you going to have your cake and eat it too?
Stupid? What is
God,
it?
I would never say that about the American people. And in fact, if you listen to Donald Trump, if you watch any of his rallies, he's the one who tends to demean and belittle and diminish the American people. He's the one who talks about an enemy within. An enemy within. Talking about the American people. Suggesting he would turn the American military on the American people.
The people
we
know
asked
exactly
that question
what he
to
means.
the former president today. Harris Faulkner had a town hall, and this is how he responded.
I heard about that. They were saying I was like threatening. I'm not threatening anybody. They're the ones doing the threatening. They do phony investigations. I've been investigated more than Alphonse Capone. He was the greatest gangster. No, it's true. No, but think of it. It's called weaponization of government. It's a terrible thing.
So,
Brett, I'm sorry, and with all due respect, that clip was not what he has been saying about the enemy within that he has repeated.
He means the swamp.
When he's speaking about the American people. That's not what you just showed.
He was asked
no, that's not what you just showed. In all fairness and respect to
when he says the enemy within, he means the politicians left and right that are deeply embedded with the anti-republic sentiment. The group of politicians that are happy to dismantle the founding principles of this country. That is the enemy within, not the people. Donald Trump's not an idiot. And honestly, I don't think she's an idiot either. I think she's actually smarter than what we're giving her credit for. But she is not a good president. Remember, when she ran for president, last go round, she received 2% of the nominations. She is disliked in the Democrat Party. The people do not like her. But when she's fed and handed the presidency, the nomination anyways, just given to her, I don't understand why Democrats are not pissed about that.
That was the question that we asked him.
He didn't show that, and here's the bottom line. He has repeated it many times, and you and I both know that. And you and I both know that he has talked about turning the American military on the American people. He has talked about going after people who are engaged in peaceful protest. He has talked about locking people up because they disagree with him. This is a democracy. And
this isn't a democracy, by the way. It's a republic. The term democracy does not exist in the founding documents. The only place you find the term democracy, as far as I know, the only places you will find the term democracy are in the Federalist Papers, and they're all in negative influence or have negative connotation. The founders did not want a democracy because cannot be a mob rule country, or the little person, the voice of the small, the wounded, they get repressed. Okay? This is not a democracy.
Democracy. The President of the United States in the United States of America should be willing to be able to handle criticism without saying he'd lock people up for doing it. And this is what is at stake, which is why you have someone like the former chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff saying what Mark Milley has said about Donald Trump being a threat to the United States of America.
He's quoted in the Bob Woodward book that way.
He's
yes.
a threat
Let
to
me
Milley
ask you
because
this,
Milley's
Madam Vice President. You call Donald Trump.
The significance
you
of that.
call Donald Trump. He's misguided. You say now
he's
unstable.
He is unstable.
He's not well. You say he's mentally not stable.
He's not stable.
Let me ask you this. You told many interviewers that Joe Biden was on his game, that ran around circles on his staff.
Okay, before they jump to this, I want to show you this real quick. You're going to see some of my inside baseball here. You know how he said that Donald Trump wants to turn the U.S. military on its people, on American. By the way, when you got some spare time and we're going to go through this is everywhere right now. I thought this was a joke. I thought this was fake. No, this is real. Look up DOD. Just Google this on your own time. DOD Directive 5240-01. Read through it. It gives authorization. This is Joe Biden. This is Joe Biden. And who's the vice president right now? Oh, yes. It's Kamala Harris. This is authorization giving DOD in terms of any kind of unrest to use force against Americans. You think I'm joking? You think I'm just barfing this out of hyperbole? Look it up. Look it up. And you'll see, oh, shite. Steve's right. All right, back at this.
When did you first notice that President Biden's mental faculties appeared diminished?
Joe Biden, I have watched from the Oval Office to the Situation Room, and he has the judgment and the experience to do exactly what he has done in making very important decisions on behalf of the American people.
There were no concerns raised?
Brett, Joe Biden is not on the ballot.
I understand,
and Donald Trump
but
is.
You talked about it.
And Donald Trump
after George Clooney said within a few minutes of talking to President Biden at a fundraiser that he thought this was not the same Joe Biden that we saw on the debate stage.
Donald Trump is on the ballot.
I understand. You met with him at least once a week for 3.5 years. You didn't have any concerns?
I think the American people have a concern about Donald Trump, which is why
Donald
the people
Trump
who know
again.
him best,
Let's talk about Donald Trump again. Taking the focus off of current inadequacies and talk about Donald
have all
Trump.
spoken
Not a
out.
good strategy.
Even people who worked for him in the Oval Office, worked with him in the Situation Room, and have said he is unfit and dangerous and should never be president of the United States again, including his former vice president, which is why the job was open for him
No, it's open because every time you create a new
mate.
candidacy for
So
president,
that is a
you can
fact.
pick whoever the hell you want as your
That
vice
is a
president.
fact.
Madam Vice President, 2 more things. You were asked on 60 Minutes about the biggest threat that the world faces, that the U.S. faces. This is what you said.
Which foreign country do you consider to be our greatest adversary?
I think there's an obvious one in mind, which is Iran. Iran has American blood on their hands. Okay?
Again.
This attack on Israel, 200 ballistic
As
missiles.
she wore on the debate.
What we need to do to ensure that Iran never achieves the ability to be a nuclear power, that is one of my highest priorities.
A number of experts thought you would say China. The FBI director had said that. But you said Iran. If that's the case, what do you say to critics who look at the actions of your administration and say you're not acting like Iran?
Is this the same Iran they gave billions of dollars to? I was just asking for a friend.
Well, I will tell you most recently, whether it was in April or in October, in the several hours on each occasion that Iran posed a threat to Israel, I was there. Most recently in the Situation Room, in the most recent attack, working with the heads
Her body
of our
language to me
military
says,
in doing
just believe
what
what I'm
America
telling you.
must always do
Just believe
to
me.
defend
Okay?
and to support
Yep, this
Israel
is what
in
happened.
its requirement to defend itself and to give American support to be able to allow Israel to
Her
have the
staff is like-
resources to defend itself against attack, including from Iran and Iran's terrorist proxies in the region.
Right.
And that
But those
is,
proxies were getting
and
funded by
my
Iran.
commitment to that is unyielding and unwavering.
Critics just say that you either relaxed or failed to enforce sanctions on Iran, allowing all of this money to flow into Iran, like billions.
Let's go back to Donald Trump, who pulled out of a deal that would have actually put Iran in check.
The estimates
and
in
then
billions
it was during Donald Trump's
that go
administration
towards the
that
Iran regime.
that we had an American military base that was attacked, where American soldiers suffered traumatic brain injuries, and Donald Trump dismissed them as headaches. Not to mention
Madam
how
Vice
Donald
President,
Trump has,
all of this money
has treated
that
and
has
talked
gone
about
in the
America's
past few
military
years.
and military service people,
Critics
calling
say
them
that it goes to
suckers and
Hezbollah,
losers,
She's got a
has
filibuster.
diminished
and
the
he's got a
significance.
filibuster to
I
take-
apologize.
Well,
distract.
I would like that we would have a conversation that is grounded
shut up.
in full assessment of the facts, which includes, I think this interview is supposed to be about the choices that your viewers should be presented about this
But
election,
you
and the
wasted your
contrast is
time.
important.
You
Yes,
totally
ma'am.
wasted
And
your
on the
time.
subject
You
of
talked
Iran,
more about Donald
I am
Trump
offering
than you did about yourself.
what
You
should
wasted the
be
whole
an
interview.
important contrast that is presented for folks to make a
And there
decision
are
that
critics
they
who
feel.
look at what the administration did and say and think differently. Madam Vice President, they're wrapping me very hard here. I hope you got to say what you wanted to say about Donald Trump. There are a lot of things
There's more to say. I have
there
much more to
are
say,
a lot of
actually.
things that people want
Oh,
to
I
learn
bet
about you.
she has
and
a
your
lot more to
policies.
say.
And that's why we
I
invited
invite
you here.
everyone to go to KamalaHarris.com, and you will see that I have 80 pages of policies
See, this
that
is
are
what you can
quite
tell.
comprehensive
She's far more
and
comfortable
should
about
be,
this. Look at her body, far more
accessible
open.
to anyone who would like to read
and
them.
excited. She's
and it
excited
includes
about
what I
that
intend to do
website.
about affordable
She's
housing,
far
what
more
I intend to do
animated
about
about it.
small businesses, what I do.
And that's why
intend
we
to do to
invited
start-
You can see her body language. She's more relaxed. She's more animated when she talks about her website because look, you don't have to talk to me anymore. Just stop talking to me. Just go to my website. It's way easier. Just go to my website because I'm just gonna filibuster and not gonna. I don't. Where this is Donald Trump. Okay, just Donald Trump.
strengthen our economy,
to see where you were in 2019 and where you are
support
now.
America's military and ensure we have the most lethal
What a
and best
disaster of an
fighting force
interview.
in the world.
Madam Vice President,
And
they're giving me a hard rap
well,
here.
I thank you for the time.
What an absolute disaster of an interview. So it blows my mind. I'm going to try and we'll cut this off here in just a couple minutes. I'm not going to talk for too long. So I wanted you to see this interview so you could digest it yourself, hear the whole thing. I hope you listen to the whole thing and tell me where I'm wrong. Maybe I'm missing something. Maybe she's an amazing candidate. Maybe she's just unicorns and rainbows. But when you start looking at her policies and you start doing the math, and there's lots of other people other than her friends that say, yeah, this is her policies for $25,000 for every new home buyer, $24,000. There's a lot of new home buyers. There's a lot of young families that can't afford because this economy is trashed because of policies over the last 4 years. Fuel's expensive, food's expensive, vehicles are outrageous, and then the cost to borrow money is going up. So you add that stress, and then we'll take $25,000 off. Well, where's that $25,000 per homeowner coming from? Well, we'll give money for new businesses, particularly minority businesses. I don't care if it's a minority business or not. It should not be a qualifier. But the problem is, that's a lot. It's going to be trillions of dollars. By the time it's all said and done, it's going to be trillions of dollars. Where is this money coming from? We can't just print this out of oblivion. It doesn't work. What are we going to do? We're going to tax more people. You could tax society to 100%. That's not going to recoup the amount of debt that's in existence right now. And then adding to that debt, it's not going to work. Besides, you can say whatever you want, as she did. She can say whatever she wants on her website saying, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. Everywhere. You get a car. It's the Oprah Winfrey approach, right? You get a house, you get a loan. Yeah. Somebody's paying for that. And it's everybody pre her administration that's on the hook for that. And then for those of us that can't make those ends meet, it's the next 5, 10, 15 generations later that are going to be stuck with that to the end of time. The only president to cut debt, accurately cut the deficit, was Calvin Coolidge. That was a while ago. He's the only one that successfully did it. I think it was 50%. None of these proposals, and Trump's, honestly, his proposals, none of them are going to cut the deficit. They're all happy to add to it. Nothing they're doing is fixing the problem. We need to take away the credit card, not just open more accounts. That's the government's approach. Left and right, it doesn't matter. That's the approach. The difference is the left opens a credit card with a huge balance, where the right just opens a credit card with a mediocre balance. That's the difference. They're taking us to the same destination. One's just getting us there quicker. What did you guys think of this interview? I think this was not good for her campaign. I think this is another big blow to what she did. Now, will it affect in the polls? I don't know. Am I completely confident about this election? I don't know. I don't know how I feel about it anymore. Will I still do my diligent duty as a citizen and vote? Yeah, absolutely, I will. If you are not registered to vote, hopefully your state allows you to register at the polls. Get your butts out and vote. There are over 10 million gun owners across the United States that are not voting. 10 million, that's an election decision. 10 million across the United States. If you want to keep your rights, because this is how it works. If they get rid of the Second Amendment, what's keeping them from the First? Nothing. Because it's just for our safety, we have to curtail our speech. And then some religion is dangerous. You can't join that church because it's dangerous. That sounds really hyperbolic. That sounds ridiculous and fake, but that's how it works. Look at every other socialist country, communist country that's ever existed, and see how they little by little eat the elephant of communism. And we're on that road. We've been eating that elephant for a while. We're the answer, folks. We are the answer. We, the people, the citizens, are the answer to this problem. But when are we going to stand up and take control again? I'm not saying January 6th, pitchforks and torch. No. What I'm saying is, get your butt off your chair. I'm talking to myself too. Make sure you elect good people in your city, in your school boards, and then your counties, and then your districts, and then your state. That's how it works. Once you get those great people elected, you hold them accountable. And then we go to the federal level. We have to be holding these asses accountable. Left, right, and center. That they lose their soul when they get to DC. I don't know what it is, who they get involved with, what parties they go to, but for some reason they lose their souls. They get sucked up into the power and the money. Because there's tons of money to be made. I mean, just a small Google search to see what people are worth now compared to what they were worth when they got into office. It's corrupt. And we've allowed Washington to be corrupt because we elect the wrong people. And maybe we elect the right people. We do, I guess, I backtrack. We elect the right people, but those people get hammered and beaten down in the cesspool of Washington, and they fail. None of us are perfect. That's why we need term limits. That's my opinion. Anyways, I'll let you guys go. Let me know where I'm wrong. If you like what I did, like, share, whatever. Leave comments. I wish more people would leave comments. I'm tough. I may not like what you have to say, but I can tell you to go to hell too, so it doesn't matter. Anyways, see you guys.